5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
By far the most published and most sold book in world history is the Bible. Today, though, in English, you can buy the Bible in all sorts of different editions, different translations, different versions, and especially during this Advent season when people are shopping. What Bible do I get, for myself or for a loved one? That's what we're going to talk about today on Ignition. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Dr. Chris Bergwald, and we want to set your faith ablaze so that you might live the adventure that comes from a relationship with Jesus Christ. Before we get into today's episode, we want you to know that we love listener feedback. So if you've got questions about today's episode, or if you have ideas for future episodes, please contact us. The easiest way to do so is by email, and the address is also simple, ignition@sfcatholic.org. Again, ignition@sfcatholic.org. I am joined in studio once again by Renae.
It sounded for a second like you were going to slip into your German accent.
No German for you. Oh, that is. Okay, I'm back.
It's funny that this is the topic today because just this morning I was cleaning out some of the books in my office and it was the Bible that has been in that office for probably, I don't even know how many years, and it's a terrible translation.
Ooh.
I've no idea what it was, but I've looked at it a couple of times. I'm like, what is this? It's way crazy. So I removed it from my office.
And what did you do with it?
I understand that you can give those to Mo for the prison ministry.
So prisoners are entitled to
that's what I said.
Terrible translations.
Your office suggested I do that. And I said, really, this translation? And she's like, it's better than no Bible, right? I said, well, that's true.
Yes, it is.
So,
yes, it is. Great. Well done.
Headed down there.
I'm glad you didn't recycle it or.
Right. I didn't feel right about that, but I don't want to use it for the Bishop's Bulletin.
Right. Well, we'll talk about that. What do you do with a Bible when it's done? We'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
That's a question that I've gotten recently via you. I've gotten a time or two that question has been posed to me. Mm-hmm. We'll talk about that another time. Another question that I get from time to time is, as I teased at the opening, what Bible do I buy, whether for myself or for somebody else?
It's not exactly a simple thing. You're like, where are the Bibles?
I'm going to get a Bible.
You're like, oh.
So whether you go to like a Catholic bookstore, like here in Sioux Falls, we have the Mustard Seed, or you go to like a Barnes & Noble, or I don't know if B. Dalton is still around, but that was
not here anyway.
Or online Amazon, a Bible. Oh my gosh. Talk about analysis paralysis. For those of us who are like prone to too many choices makes hard decisions.
Right.
That is definitely something. So I thought it'd be, again, and especially because folks are listening to this in the middle of December, if you're listening to this when this episode comes out, and you might be thinking, like, what Bible do I get? Right. Again, well, maybe for somebody else, but maybe it's a present to yourself.
Right.
So, Renae, what do you know about Bible translations?
Well, I know the official one from the USCCB, United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, is the New American Bible Translation, revised edition.
Yes. So
that's what I use for the Bishop's Bulletin.
Right. So, and by official, you mean?
That's what they use.
Yeah. So,
and that's the one they have said, this is the one we use and the one we recommend.
Mm-hmm. So it's the one you'll find if you go to the website, because you can find the text of that Bible on the USCCB's website. Great. We'll come back to the New American Bible in a little bit. What else do you know about Bible translations?
Well, I know that you can get like just the New Testament. You can get just the Gospels, different translations. Well, now you're not talking about difference between Bible and Catholic Bible and Protestant Bible necessarily, are you?
You can answer however you like.
So there's definitely differences between Protestant Bibles and Catholic Bibles.
Yep.
And I don't even know why there's so many different translations. That's kind of a mystery. I hope you can answer. Because it's like, should be just the Bible. Can you just tell us what it is?
Right, what it says. Yeah. So there's a couple things there because so first of all, there are multiple different translations, and the Catholic Protestant, we'll talk about that a little bit, but just to make brief reference, even among there are at least 5. I think I'd say there are 3 primary Catholic translators. There are 3 that are by far the most popular Catholic modern English translations
Okay.
of the Bible.
Okay.
But there's still a couple that were made, well, one made in the last 100-ish years, and another, an older English one. So
Is that the
Douay-Rheims? Yeah. So you mentioned the New American Bible, the Revised Standard Version Catholic Edition, or Second Catholic Edition, and then the New Jerusalem Bible. So there's a 3 primary, I'd say, and we'll talk about each of them in a little bit. But then there's the Monsignor Knox, Ronald Knox, an English priest in the 20th century, early 20th century. He translated the Bible himself from the original languages. So that's a known one. And then the Douay-Rheims.
Right.
Which is actually probably more well-known than the Knox translation.
Right. I had not heard of that one.
But those are probably the 5, there may be additional, but those are the 5 primary Catholic translations. Then when you open up beyond that, and that's just English.
Right.
And we're still just talking about the English translations of the Bible. But so there's the translations first, and then there's beyond that, there's the editions. So you can have the same. So I have...
If you're not watching this on video, Dr. Bergwald has
covered the tables in the books.
7 books laid out in front of him.
I do.
And I assume these are all some sort of Bibles.
Well, one case it's actually just study Bibles. One is a resource.
Okay.
Just one.
Okay.
So there is, and I'll talk about this if you're looking. I'm not going to talk about it yet, but these 2 Bibles are the same translation, but they're obviously different editions. They look different. They have a little bit different extra materials within them. So different translations and then different editions of the same translations. So why so many? Why translations at all, Renae?
That's I don't get that.
Well, do you read Greek?
Okay,
or Hebrew?
Right. So there's going to be such a snot. There's definitely, we have to translate it from those languages, but shouldn't the translation in English always be the same?
So that's that is kind of, if it's not the $1 million, it's one of the $1 million questions.
Yeah.
So first of all, going back, I remember when I was doing my graduate studies at the Pontifical University of St. Thomas Aquinas in Rome, commonly called the Angelicum. At the Angelicum, I asked one of my biblical professors when I was doing graduate studies, Father, what do you think? What's your opinion? What's the best translation of the Bible? And his response was very helpful. He said, "Your own."
That sounds like a Protestant thing to say. I'm sorry.
Wow. To my Protestant brothers and sisters who might be tuning in, sorry for my co-hosts. No, his point was read the text in the original languages and then make your own, like as you're reading it, translate it. That's not very helpful.
No,
in other words,
read the Greek and then try to
Greek.
Yeah.
So the Old Testament in primarily Hebrew, but also we have some of the books. We have the Greek versions of them, and then the New Testament is in Aramaic, Hebrew, Aramaic, and then Greek for parts of the Old Testament and Greek for all of the New Testament. So Renae, go. Just forget translations. Learn Hebrew, Aramaic, and
get
Koine
right on
Greek.
that.
Right on it. Right.
Was the entire New Testament done in Greek?
The entire
Aramaic?
New Testament. So there's a theory that maybe Matthew was originally composed in Aramaic, but the canonical, the inspired version is the Greek text.
Okay.
So, good question. So the original. The Bible is not written in English. Duh.
What?
Right? I know. Shocking. So the Bible is not written in English. So what do we do if we don't and are not going to learn Hebrew, Aramaic, or ancient Greek? We have to rely on translations. And this is where, so to your point, well, can't they just translate it? But how you translate, and I don't want to go too deep into the woods here because I want to get to the nitty gritty of how do you pick. But translating is much more difficult than I think many of us initially imagine.
Right. Well, because words don't just the one word in Greek isn't exactly the same thing in English necessarily, and I think that's the biggest problem.
So there's word to word, but then especially idiom, I'll take one. It just can get complicated really quickly. I'll give you an example. Break a leg. You know what break a leg means?
Yeah.
What does it mean?
Do a good job. or do well.
And
or
usually
something
it's
like that.
around
Yeah.
like a performance, or you can get up in front of people, like play maybe a speech or something. Hey, break a leg. Now, let's put ourselves 5,000 years in the future, and people who don't know anything about, don't speak, they look at 21st century American English the way we look at ancient Hebrew,
Right.
Aramaic, and Greek. I'm not going to learn that. So somebody's going to translate the phrase they find in ancient American English, break a leg. You could translate those words literally, break a leg, into whatever the literal, or you can translate it, do a good job.
Right. Okay. Which then could also be written in a number of ways.
Right.
Do a good job.
Yeah. So which one is the
Right.
best translation?
Right.
So there's something very similar when it comes to any translation, whether from one language to another, whether it's modern German into modern English or ancient Greek into modern English. The challenge of how do you translate from one language to another is really difficult, and that's just one example. There are all sorts of other reasons why it's more complicated than we might think.
Like languages are structured differently.
Right,
So
right.
sometimes that really wreaks havoc.
Exactly.
As well.
Yeah. So all that, like how, the order and so on. So there are all sorts of ways, and we see this in the world of translating, again, modern languages or ancient languages into English. The translator has a difficult task in front of them. So when it comes to translating the Bible, then there are generally there are different philosophies on the best way to translate. So going to the example of break a leg, some would say if you're going to be as faithful as possible, you need to translate it into literally the equivalent of break a leg, not the idea, but the words. So whatever the word for to break, snap is, and whatever the word for leg is, you have to translate that literally. Others would say, no, it's okay to, like, what's more important is to translate the idea.
Right.
So clearly what those ancient Americans were trying to say was, hey, good luck, do a good job.
Yeah. Don't break the leg on the stage.
Right. So they would say you should translate it. So there's formal equivalence, dynamic equivalence are sort of the more technical terms. Formal equivalence in translation says you translate it more, if you will, the words literally. Dynamic equivalence says you translate the idea. So that's where break a leg in dynamic equivalence would become, hey, good job or good luck or whatever. What do you do when it comes to the Bible? So scholars have gone around with this for a long time. They still go around about this. But I want to go back just to illustrate this, if you don't mind. And I'm not asking for what the translation was, but you mentioned earlier that in your office you got rid of a bad translation. So why was it a bad translation?
To me, like you would see a verse and you would read it that compared to the New American Bible Translation, and it just came off as very different in the meaning of it. It's hard to explain without like seeing the two together.
Yeah, that's fair.
But it seemed very different in a lot of ways.
So there are some translations which take the idea of dynamic equivalence, or you want to like basically translate the idea of what's being said very far, where the translation becomes very modern American,
Right.
Almost a paraphrase.
Right. Yes.
And people look. The problem with that is when you're doing that, it's really easy for the translator to maybe intentionally, but usually unintentionally put too much of themselves
Put a little
into the
bias
text.
in it.
Exactly.
Accidentally.
Yeah. So you're going to translate the word, or the idea. Well, what idea? The author's idea? How do you know it's the author's idea? And if you're now putting it into a different way of saying basically the same thing,
Right.
was that your idea, or is that the author in the other language's idea? So that can be the problem with dynamic translation. So the dynamic equivalency, formal equivalency, and we're going to bring an end to this pretty quickly, I promise. Formal equivalency says to avoid that whole thing of the translator unintentionally inserting themselves into the text of the translation, it's better to go with a more literal translation. So break a leg in ancient American English would become in this future language, literally break a leg. And then it's the job of the reader to understand and educate themselves. Oh, well, when those crazy Americans in 2021 said break a leg, they weren't saying, hey, do yourself some bodily damage. That was their way of saying good luck.
And that might be a good place for a footnote.
Exactly. Yes, a footnote. So that's where, and looking at Catholic translations, most of them today, and the three that all five that I mentioned, but the three most well known, I would all generally, and there's a continuum, but they fall more towards the formal equivalency. Okay. They're more about translating the word, but there's a gradation. I'll talk about that more in just a moment. But if you're just tuning in, welcome to the show. This is Ignatius. I'm your host, Dr. Chris Bergwald, visiting today with Renae Kranz is your name.
You can do
excited.
It. You can do it.
Slow down. Bill said, slow down. Renae Kranz.
That's so much better.
That's very different from the last 15 minutes of the show. About translations of the Bible, picking and editions of the Bible. So, I mentioned the three big ones for modern American English are the New American Bible, Revised Edition, you mentioned, the New Jerusalem Bible, and then the Revised Standard Version Catholic Edition or Second Catholic Edition. Among these, probably the most literal one, and it is, I'll be honest, it's my favorite, is the Revised Standard Version Catholic Edition. Okay. No disrespect to the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. The reason it's official, by the way, do you know why? Do you know why the NABRE is the official, if quote unquote?
I do not.
Because the U.S. Bishops Conference commissioned it to be done back in the 70s. They hired some scholars, so the U.S. Bishops Conference owns the copyright to the NAB.
Sure, that makes sense.
It's not all about money. I'm not saying that at all. But they do, they paid, and it's always we've got the revised it. It's always a work in progress because again, translating, you want to make it understandable to people today. Yeah. So there will be continually, even with a formal equivalency, more literal approach, there's going to be some tweaks necessary.
Right.
Yeah. So the NABRE, the NJB, New Jerusalem, and then the RSVCE. The RSVCE is my favorite because it's the most literal.
Okay.
I'm with those who would say it's better to make the text as literal as possible and then, rely on study aids, footnotes, commentaries, other things to explain. So, Jacob hated Esau. No, not Jacob. Isaac hated Esau. I think that's, you read a lot about people hating people in the Bible, and sometimes God hating people.
Right.
Well, that's an idiom where it means they're loved less.
Oh, okay.
That's not what it means to you and me. Jesus, he who does not hate his father, mother, brother, sister is not worthy of me. Jesus, you said to love your neighbor as yourself.
Right.
Well, that's an idiom. And there's also, again, break a leg, an idiom.
Right.
But I think it's better for us to, if Jesus said, he who loves his brother and sister more than me, I understand what that means, but that's not what the actual Greek says. Right. So put the Greek into English as literally as possible, and then I will have to do the work, but I'll do the work of figuring out. Yep. So those are I'd say, again, the Douay Rheims and Monsignor Ronald Knox's translations, they're around, but the big ones are the NJB, the NABRE, and the RSVCE.
A lot of letters going on around here. A lot
of letters. All three of them are fine. If you're really interested, people would say, and I am with this, get more than one.
Right.
Because no translation is perfect. Having more than one translation is a good way to, and comparing them can be a good way to try to get a sense of what the original language said.
Sure.
So I would say with that, this is the NAB, not the RE. This is an older one. The New American Bible and the RSVCE are probably your two the two translations I would recommend.
Okay.
Now, then of that, what edition do you get? Okay. This is definitely getting much more into opinion, but I have become a fan of the Great Adventure Bible, which Ascension Press has just started publishing in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
I have an edition of the RSVCE called the Ignatius Bible because they're the ones who publish that translation. But it's just the text with a very few footnotes.
Oh, okay.
I
like footnotes.
The Great Adventure Bible has not a lot more footnotes. It has some more footnotes, but it's got some articles to introduce the different timelines, the different historical eras.
Right.
It's got other articles. It's got the nice colored tabs, color-coded tabs. So I like this as sort of still one like relatively compact Bible.
I think we bought that one for our nephew for his confirmation. Yeah. It's a good, especially for someone who might be new to the Bible.
Yes.
I feel like that's a good one.
That'd be good. Now, I didn't bring with me my copy of the Word on Fire Gospels. That's Bishop Robert Barron's Apostolate Word on Fire. They've done an edition of just the Gospels with a lot of articles and commentary and so on. A lot of that from Bishop Barron. That kind of gets into the whole study Bible approach.
Yes.
So with study Bibles, my easily top go-to recommendation, at least for the New Testament, the Old Testament's still in process. It's not out yet completely, but the Ignatius Catholic Study Bible.
I think I have that one.
You probably do. This is
that's big.
This is as big as
and that's just the New Testament.
That's just the New Testament.
Yeah.
So it's got all sorts of commentary. Like oftentimes half or less of a third, maybe a quarter of the page is the Bible
actual
text,
Bible verses.
and below that is the commentary. So if you want to dive in a little bit more to understand, this is easily for people who are just want to understand more. I've read the Bible, or I've done some Bible studies, but I want to dig deeper. This is easily my favorite study Bible. But if you want to go even deeper, there's commentaries where it takes each book of the Bible and unpacks it. So the Catholic Condimentary on Sacred Scripture is my go-to series on this, and this is one volume on Luke.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
Luke isn't even close itself to that long.
Oh, no. Yeah, like
Not
if I just pulled out Luke from here, it'd be like
that.
Probably like 40 or 50 pages. Tops, 40 or 50 pages. So this is going to be a deeper dive if you really want to dig into a study of, in this case, Luke. This is a series that also either has or soon will have all of the New Testament.
Okay.
And in some cases, they've combined some because some of the New Testament
they're very short.
Letters are very short, so you can combine. And they might do some, but probably not all of the Old Testament in the Catholic Commentary on Sacred Scripture. But then there's all sorts of other studies. There's atlases, which I think, on Biblical Bites for Dr. B. Bill loves it when we start talking geography lesson. But for me, that is helpful. Like the example I've given before on Biblical Bites, we read, for instance, Jesus and Mary Jesus and his disciples, they're going up to Jerusalem, but you look at where they're going from Galilee, which is in the north, they're going south to Jerusalem. Well, looks like on a map, at least they're going down to Jerusalem. This is where actually the map wouldn't be enough. You need to know the geography where Jerusalem is on a mountain. So they're going up, even though they're going south, quote unquote, down on a map, they're going up in elevation. So the gospel writer tells us that they're going up to Jerusalem. Right. So having an atlas, topographical maps or whatever can be helpful for some of us. I've got the Catholic Bible Dictionary. The general editor of this is Scott Hahn. So this just takes words and explains them. So what is the courtyard of the Gentiles in the Jerusalem? The word gate. We've got
Do you use this a lot for Biblical Bites? Or you just already know all that stuff?
Oh, I know all this stuff so well. Yeah. No, sometimes I will. It depends on what I decide I want to talk about. I do often consult this.
Right.
There's all sorts of other study resources that are out there that are available. So it really just depends on what you or the person maybe who you're buying the Bible for, where are they at? What do they want? I would say something like the Great Adventure Bible or the NABRE. Again, there's all sorts of editions of the New American Bible, revised edition. Some of them have some study aids and so on. I've got a study Bible for the NAB right here. But where are they at? Again, I go RSVC for the translation, but something like the Great Adventure Bible is really helpful because it's got those extra articles.
Right.
If they want to go deeper, then you can go into the study Bibles or even the individual commentaries.
Okay.
So we've got about less than 3 minutes left. Renae, I've thrown a lot at you and the listeners very quickly. Comments, questions, just as we start to move towards an end. For you or yourself, on behalf of yourself or maybe the listeners?
Well, I know I think I have that one on the underneath this one.
Yep.
The one on
Ignatius
the New
Catholic Study
Testament.
Bible. Yep.
I really like that one because there's so much in there that you're like, well, what does that mean exactly?
Right.
And to be able to see that, it really helps to understand things a lot better as you're going along.
Yep.
So I really like that one. I'd like to get the Great Adventure, that one, the Great Adventure Bible, because it looks really interesting. Some of the articles in there.
Yeah, they're very.
And we actually did buy their timeline map.
Mm-hmm. The chart.
The chart. That's really helpful too. To kind of see the salvation history kind of lined up.
Exactly. Yeah. So Jeff Caven's the creator, if you will, of that system. Has sort of breaks down the Bible into 12 different chronological periods of varying lengths. And then you look at, there's actually 14 books in the Bible. Of the 73 total, there's 14 that you can read to get that narrative arc, that overall story, going from creation all the way up to the church. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
you can skip Deuteronomy.
You
I don't know if you can or not. But
you can skip Deuteronomy. But it isn't the inspired word of God, Renae. So.
I know.
I should mention too, and I made allusion to it. I didn't bring my copy of it. The Word on Fire Bible, which is being published chunk by chunk. The Gospels is out right now. I think the rest of the New Testament is coming out in 2022. Mm-hmm. That has a lot of Bishop Barron in it, but also other modern writers, G.K. Chesterton, St. John Paul II, and then ancient like saints and fathers of the church, St. Augustine, St. Ambrose, guys like that. That is deliberately, that edition is being published for seekers in mind. So maybe somebody who's open to learning more.
Given Bishop Barron's activities.
So that might be a good one. I don't always, it's the NRSV, the New Revised Standard Version, which I don't want to get into the details. I don't love that translation quite as much, but the commentary makes that Bible worth it. So just a little bit on different options for the different Catholic translations that are out there and different editions for the Bible.
Yeah. Then you stand there and you're like, now I need a cover. Exactly. Look at the 800 covers sitting here.
That will be for another time. That will wrap up this episode of Ignition. Thanks for listening. Again, you can email us with any thoughts, questions, or ideas for future episodes. Until next time, may God bless you.